keep talking about they wanted you to more aggressively investigate, quote, voter fraud. But explain exactly what's being talked about in your resistance to restricting minority turnout.
Right. Well, I was under a lot of pressure by Republican state operatives in New Mexico to file matters. I had lunch with some friends who would say, hey, you know, the party really wants you to file something. Could you please file something? And I told one of my friends who'd been a federal prosecutor, I said, look, you know how it works. We need evidence. We have to be able to prove it. I can't just accuse somebody and then let it go. The former general counsel for the state party there in New Mexico was calling me and my assistant, leaving emails and voice messages, just obsessed with this topic. The Republicans were convinced that there was massive fraud going on in New Mexico and other states, although my focus was obviously only New Mexico. They believed there were lots of illegal immigrants voting, that there were lots of felons voting. And initially I thought, well, maybe there's something to that. But again, prosecutors can't file charges on rumor and innuendo. We have to be able to have conclusive evidence we can prove to a jury. And I didn't have that. And obviously a place like New Mexico is minority majority. We've been a minority majority state now for quite some time. And I believe, looking back now, that there was an attempt to suppress the voting, not only of people who did not have the right to vote, such as felons and illegals, but possibly those that had the right to vote, maybe older people that don't have IDs, which is why there was litigation going on about a voter ID law, which failed at the state level.
What is vote caging?
Oh, gosh, that's a terrible practice. If it's not illegal, it should be. I hope Congress fixes that problem. It's when you send voter information to a group of people that you have reason to believe are no longer there, such as military personnel who are overseas, such as students at historically black colleges. And then when it comes back as undeliverable, the party uses that information to remove that person from the voter rolls, claiming that they're no longer there or they didn't have the right to vote. It's a reprehensible practice. I'd never heard of the phrase until after I left office.
What do you think we have to be concerned about in the 2008 election?
Well, I mean, I hope the media keeps shining the spotlight on groups like the American Center for Voting Rights, the ACVR, who has been engaging in this type of voter suppression action, especially targeting elderly people and minorities. You know, I mean, if you're an American citizen who is not a felon, you have the right to vote. So I would just hope that in swing states like Missouri, Wisconsin, New Mexico, and a handful of other states, that the Democrat Party, that the media really keeps a lot of pressure on this. My own belief, Amy, is that the Republican Party will not be engaging in this type of guerrilla activity like they have in previous years because of the pushback that they saw as a result of our firings.
Can you talk about what you represented to Karl Rove and then what Karl Rove did?
Oh, yes. I only met Karl Rove one time. He was at a luncheon in Albuquerque. He came over and introduced himself. But, you know, he was looking to broaden the base of the party. And as an evangelical Christian, as a military veteran, and as a Hispanic, I represented the future of the party. And I was all in one package. I'd run for office. I'm typically conservative on lots of social issues. And I think Rove saw that I represented the future of the party. But I think he also thought I was the kind of person who would file bogus voter fraud prosecutions. I was the kind of U.S. attorney that would rush an indictment if it would help a fellow conservative. And, you know, I didn't do that. And I don't want to paint myself as the only one, because John McKay in Seattle also refused to file bogus election fraud cases in the Washington state. And Todd Graves in Missouri refused to file bogus voter fraud prosecutions after looking at the evidence. I mean, they thought they had political operatives, and what they had were principal law enforcement officials.
You were a loyal member of the Republican Party and the Bush administration. What ultimately pushed you to break ranks? Was it your firing?
Well, it was a combination of things. They slandered our reputation. When the Deputy Attorney General testified that we had performance-related problems, we knew he knew better. We knew he'd seen our evaluations. And also, I knew that John McKay and Carol Lamb and Charlton and Bogdan and Chiara represented some of the best U.S. attorneys out there. These are very forward-thinking, smart, principled people. So I think I wrote in the New York Times last year something to the effect that I knew I could be fired for doing the wrong thing. I didn't know I could be fired for doing the right thing. And the right thing was upholding the rule of law. I mean, this is not about us losing our jobs. This is a matter of us enforcing the rule of law and separation of powers and doing what prosecutors have traditionally done in prior administrations, which was be independent and autonomous of elected officials.
Do you think the prosecution, the jailing of Alabama Governor Don Siegelman is related to what happened to you, David Iglesias?
I think there's a very strong circumstantial case there. I've not followed that issue as carefully as our own firings, but based on what I've read, and also it's really important to point out, federal courts of appeal almost never release somebody who's already been convicted and is serving time. I called my office after the Siegelman story broke. I asked one of my lawyers that does nothing but appeals. I said, has this happened in this district, that the circuit has released somebody we've convicted? He goes, it's never happened. So the listener really needs to understand how rare it was for the Fifth Circuit there to release Governor Siegelman. I think it has lots of indicia of political interference, which would explain why Rove doesn't want to talk about it, because he has criminal liability, and he knows that.
And Karl Rove vowing to fight a congressional subpoena to testify on the politicization of the Justice Department, now demanding that he not have to testify under oath or that there be any transcript of his testimony.
Which is a completely unacceptable offer. I mean, any prosecutor worth his or her salt is going to say that testimony is worthless. If it's not under oath, not subject to the penalties of perjury, if it's not transcribed, and if it's not in public, it's a worthless statement. I mean, I know Congress will never accept that. I believe Rove will not show up. He'll be added to the current litigation between the House of Representatives and Harriet Miers and Josh Bolten, who similarly thumbed their nose at the rule of law, didn't even show up to claim privilege. I mean, anybody out there who's been in the courts realizes when you get a subpoena, you can't just ignore it. You have to show up, you have to state why you're privileged, what information you can't talk about for whatever reason. Documents, you have to create a privilege log and specify what they are and what privilege you're claiming. But one thing you can't do is ignore a subpoena, which is exactly what they're doing.
Your thoughts on John McCain? Did he enter into any of this to help you at any point?
No. No, I've got a lot of respect for John McCain, too. I mean, he's served his country honorably, obviously was a POW. I mean, I've got a lot of respect for John McCain, too. But no, his, you know, they're pursuing their campaign, and they're not interested in this issue. I think a lot of people think this is yesterday's news, not realizing that probably the largest Inspector General's report within the Justice Department's history is ready to drop.
David Iglesias, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Served as United States Attorney for the District of New Mexico from 2001 to 2007. His book is Injustice Inside the Scandal That Rocked the Bush Administration. Our website is democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.